And welcome to I Love Black People. We're just so appreciative of this journey, and along this journey, I get to introduce you to folks I've met, been amazing, and share some of their stories so you can be as inspired, as empowered as I've been. And today we got a wonderful brother, good brother Russell Schultz, and he's going to be talking about his journey as it relates to political prisoners, his family, his father, and his passions.
Today's episode of I Love Black People on Howard University Radio Voices on Sirius XM 141 is brought to you by The Global Green Book, a Black Survival Guide, The Global Green Book 2020, the Healthcare Edition, which identifies Black-friendly and Black-owned healthcare providers worldwide. A Black Survival Guide highlighting places across the globe for Black people. The Global Green Book, available on Amazon and iloveblackpeople.com. Special thanks to Banneker Communities.
Welcome, good brother Russell. Thank you.
Thank you, brother Sinclair, for having me on this platform and for loving black people, loving black folk. I'm thankful and appreciative for that work, but I'm more appreciative for the work you're doing on bringing us together globally and bringing us together financially. And in that vein, my father, Russell Maroon Schultz, was doing very similar works in the 70s as a member of the Black Panther Party and as a member of the Black Liberation Army. Economically, they did expropriations from banks and all kinds of other different corporate entities that they felt not only exploited the Black community, but were racist and were unbiased to, us and our communities. So those economic and material expropriations, fed communities in the 60s and things like that. But my father's history is one of growing up in Philadelphia, like a lot of young people in the 60s, being involved in doo-wop and street culture, singing on the corner, being in gangs and things like that, until a young man was shot down by the police officer, Amadou Diallo style, in front of his mother. And my dad and his friends retaliated. And at the end of the night, a police officer lay dead. And by the end of the week, in the country, multiple police officers have been shot because our communities had kind of had enough at that point in time and were retaliating and fighting back against the brutality. And so Russell Maroon Schultz, my dad, has been around doing work in our communities to fight oppression and fight for the rights of Black people here and globally since the 70s, and has just recently been released due to the fact that he has stage 4 cancer. He's just recovering from COVID. He can only be fed intravenously because he had to have an operation about 2 years ago where they removed his upper and lower intestine. So he can only relieve himself through a colostomy bag. And just in this past situation where we had to have an emergency hearing, he was basically sent back to the prison without the ability to eat or drink or anything like that. And that's when we went to court and said that we would rather have him home, and this was inhumane, and that the state didn't have the apparatus or the will to keep my father alive. And so the people, the lawyers, the medical, the judges, because we had clergy, we had legislators, we had all kinds of people sign on to say that this was inhumane treatment. So where we are right now is my dad is home in hospice, but this work continues because he's still a ward of the state. He was only released because he's on his deathbed. If some miracle happens and he gets better, he has to return to prison. So this is one ongoing struggle that we have to just really stay vigilant with liberating our people, and we have more people to go. But, I would love to be engaged with I Love Black People for the liberation of political prisoners and the intersection of finance, Bitcoin, tech, because there's a lot of ways that we can help our folks tech-wise. There's a lot of ways that we can help our folks economically that is in need today for our overall struggles, not just for our struggles for people in prison. So I impose upon our communities to come together, work together closely, forget our differences, bury our hatchets, and work collectively in solidarity to bring people like my dad home, which I'm thankful to Sinclair. I'm thankful to I Love Black People. I'm thankful to Ben Meyer. I'm thankful to all of these different entities who over the years, because this has been since 1972, when my dad was incarcerated, that we've been fighting to get him home. So this is a 50-year struggle, and it took all types from all walks to bring him home. And this has also showed the solidarity in the African community, in the Black community, in the States that hasn't been shown in a long time. But it shows that when we stick together and we work together, we can do amazing things.
Humbly, I mean, that was a lot, and that was a great introduction. What would you, I guess, add to the conversation of what people can do to help liberate our current political prisoners, and maybe even talk about, the definition of a political prisoner? What is, in general, how we associate and categorize our brothers and sisters who are political prisoners, and then possibly even connect that to what we as individuals can do to be supportive, no matter what state or if it's federal, local, how we can do more to be supportive.
Right. So our definition for political prisoners is really simple: is anyone who has taken up arms against the state, or the state has targeted specifically as an enemy of it in seditious ways or in military ways or things like that. And it's very clear when the state has targeted specific individuals as dissidents, specifically in the context of their work in their communities, their written works, their economic works, things of that sort. And so you'll have a literary genius like a Mumia. You'll have a military genius like my father. And you'll have, even scientific and economic geniuses like Sundiata Acoli and Imam Jamil Al-Amin, who these people have been specifically attacked because of their abilities in our communities. So Fred Hampton Jr. raised some years ago, when he was doing very good work in Chicago, that all of us are political prisoners, and that we just live actually in a minimum security prison, and our peoples live in a maximum security prison. But it's very important that we don't get confused and we don't mix our political prisoners who were targeted by the state with just the politics that end us up in prison, that make us political prisoners, because those are actually two different things, because everybody in prison is a political prisoner in the context of the politics that end us up there in this society. But our political prisoners have either taken up arms against the state, or their work in the community is so profound that they've been targeted by the state. So that's the definition of our political prisoners. And the ways the many, many ways. And I love Black people. I love the young spirit there. And that spirit is the spirit that is bringing new and technological spirit to this fight for humanity. And so I see that. I love that. And the way it could look for any young person, as simple as going onto your social media, going onto your TikTok, and creating content that is exciting, creating content that has good information, creating content that grabs the viewer, creating content that's factual, creating content that covers bases that haven't been covered. And we see this now with young people, and it's sheerly amazing. And my nephew actually created a piece of content that went viral for my father, and it had the soundtrack to it. Obviously, it had the visuals, it had the news content to it, so when you sit down and you put together great content, it can go global, as you know. So that intersection with the technology, and there's a ton of different technical ways that people can help out in the struggle for humanity. I know that there are some pockets of people of color who are really getting skilled at dealing with legislators, also dealing with organizing voters, also dealing with creating blocks and leveraging those blocks. And those blocks and that leveraging and that voting now actually has a online social media and a technical intersection. So everybody's online these days who is in office. Legislation, you see how Trump used it to leverage his campaign. We have to do that same thing for our liberation and freedom of our people and our communities in general. And we have way more creativity than some of these campaigns we see, like the Trump campaign. No diss or hate on Trump, but I know we way more creative than that. So if we just put our creative juices together in a technical way, I think we could do a lot.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna have you. I'll diss them for you. But with that being said, all these politicians are problematic. I guess trying to get a better connection. Are there any websites or any ways you would direct folks to get more information about engaging the issue of political prisoners as it relates to folks like your father and other people who are still behind bars?
Yes. So my dad's website is always a hub for information, and that's www.russellmaroonshokes at WordPress. But also there is the Jericho movement, which is jericho.com. And they also have all of the listings of all of the current and released political prisoners, where they could be contacted at, what their institution is, what their number is in the institution address, how you can write them and contact them. There's also a bunch of prison and abolition organizations that are doing a ton of work around the political prisoners. The Free Maroon Now campaign, which was largely responsible for liberating my father. We have a link tree and also a website at Free Maroon Now. But I think it's really important that people recognize that we have a whole list of different organizations that people can tie into at my dad's website, also at the Maroon Party for Freedom Now, and also on Jericho. So any of those sites can be, and also the link tree can be attached, or people can go there in order to get more information on how to liberate political prisoners. And my dad's campaign will be now transformed into a campaign to free other political prisoners. Most of the people who were working to liberate my father outside of the lawyers and the medical will be moving on to 9 times out of 10 Sundiata Acoli's case, and will continue on with other political prisoners and continue putting out information around their cases.
All right, and with these, are the issues being, is it federal or state? I know when we talk about Mumia, that's Pennsylvania, right? Is that federal or is that Pennsylvania?
That is in Mumia's case, Pennsylvania. He is not a federal prisoner. Neither was my father. But as we've seen in the past, with my father, we spent probably a good 5 or more years during the Camp Hill riots, where my father, Mumia, Leonard Peltier, a whole gang of people were all sent to Marion because the state was under the impression that after the Camp Hill riots, that all of the prisons were about to explode. And so they took all of the key organizers out of the prisons, which is against the law state-wise. These are state prisoners, and they moved them all to Marion, which is a federal max prison, and they moved them to Colorado, the underground prison. And so, you know, we talk state, federal, but at the end of the day, when they need to deal with these specific prisoners that we were talking about, political prisoners, they throw that out the window. It doesn't matter whether you have a state case or a federal case. You know, we'll make it, we'll use things like national security, and then all of that goes out the window and you become a federal prisoner. And that's what has happened historically. But yes, my dad's a state prisoner. A lot of these political prisoners are state prisoners until the state decides that they're not.
Wow. So you said prisoner underground, and then now you're talking about other prisons?
Yes.
What would you say would be the most important thing that we need to do to try to resolve some of those issues?
Well, the most important thing, I think, is just educating ourselves around what the laws are, educating ourselves around what our actual abilities and capabilities are, educating ourselves around what has happened historically and the best practices, because what we learned in bringing my father home is that there actually is some science to it. There actually is some layers of different avenues you have to be in. You have to be in the legal, you have to be in the medical, you have to be in the legislative, you know, you have to be kind of working these different areas all at once. So yes, those type of things are the priority, and we as a people, more than anything, have to come together in these trying times. We have to find some solidarity. We have to find reasons to be together, and we have to bury those reasons that we weren't together. We have to get rid of any schisms. We have to get rid of and bury any hatchets that we've had, because we're just in a time where we don't have the time to deal with the petty differences. We only really have the time to come together collectively and recognize who we are as a family. That's the time. That's why it's such a priority time right now with COVID and everything else. We have to really put things to the side, stop the nonsense, and come together collectively.
So the impact of COVID has made it more difficult for dealing with issues of political prisoners, or I guess you're saying it's changed some of the climate, the legal process, the healthcare process, which are key things that we deal with in identifying Black friendly and Black lawyers. How has that process been as it relates to dealing with your father's case and political prisoners in general, dealing with lawyers?
Yeah, it's been really tough. It's been really tough. My father has had a team of grassroots lawyers around him, mainly the ALC, the Anarchist Law Center, and Brett Grody, who actually was just a young anarchist kid who was asking my dad, what should I do? 15 years ago. And my dad was like, go to school and be a lawyer and help people get out of jail or whatever. So the guy went to school, became a lawyer, started ALC, and learned some things in my dad's solitary confinement case from Reed Smith, because my father also had retained the services, the pro bono services of Reed Smith, one of the biggest law firms in the world, and they were responsible for assisting and getting him out of solitary confinement. And those grassroots lawyers watched and learned that process, and then were able to use it effectively to bring other people home. So using the corporate technique, the grassroots lawyers were able to get a lot done.
I think that's a big point, though, just making sure that we identify law firms, lawyers that take this issue of political prisoners seriously. And I think we probably need to circle back on that, because as it relates to what we're building globally, this global network of relationships of key people who want to make sure that Black folks are free. I just came back from Niagara Falls with my wife, and instead of calling our people runaway slaves and some of these weird names, they said they were freedom seekers. And I was thinking about how we can connect. We're still seeking freedom. Like literally, the folks that was going to the north or going to Canada, we always talk about the waterfall, but really that fact that was a natural phenomena, that was like a way to direct you how you could get there. I'm looking for Niagara Falls, like literally to help you make it through the Underground Railroad. And literally the folks on the Underground Railroad, they called them freedom seekers. And I was like, wow. Like this is, I
never heard that one.
Right, me either. So he's because in context, freedom seeking, there's a spectrum. We're on the part of that continuum. Like we're still seeking freedom for our people and for ourselves. So just like our ancestors were seeking freedom at that time under a certain type of bondage, we're still seeking it, and that connecting us, as opposed to they were one thing, we're another. We're literally part of the same. I mean, of course we know, but I'm saying, using that term of art words, we're literally seeking freedom right now. I was like, wow.
No, that's heavy. That's heavy. That's heavy.
Bro. So, bro, let's keep seeking this freedom. Let's keep doing this work. As we wrap up, what would you like to leave our listeners? That we got folks from all over who are so concerned about Black people and making sure we're protected from racism and xenophobia and every other horrible thing that's being done by white supremacists. What can we do?
What we can do, again, is just look to your right, look to your left, and find the strength in each other. Don't figure the shortcoming. Don't look for the weakness. Definitely let's find the collective strength in our communities. Because again, what I like to say, Sinclair, is, do your history, do your homework. Don't let these people start talking to you, about these new revisionary history ideas, this critical race and all of this stuff. No, just do your regular history. Understand who you are as an African. Do that historical study, and if you do that properly, if you study your scholars, the people who have wrote information for you about your struggles, about your culture, about who you are, you'll be actually just fine if you do that. If you just, do your John Henry Clark work, do your Chancellor work, do your Ivan Van Sertima work, do the studies of those who actually cared enough about you, to love and put out, best practices for you. And I think, we need more of that. We need more looking inward, our history, not the
and there you go.
revisionist stuff.
And look, and follow that science, not the science that's paid for by big pharma and everybody else and these corporate banksters. So I'm definitely picking up what you're putting down on that one. And again, Brother Russell, I appreciate you and appreciate your friendship and the fact that we never surrender, and we're definitely moving forward and continue to keep your father in our prayers. Again, we're just blessed to still have his spirit with us, and for you to be encouraged by so much of the work that's been done before, so we can continue to do this work in the future. So with that being said, we always wrap up with I am because we are, and I definitely am because of you. Thank you, Brother Russell.
Thank you, Brother Sinclair.
Today's episode of I Love Black People on Howard University Radio Voices on Sirius XM 141 is brought to you by the Global Green Book, a Black survival guide, the Global Green Book 2020, the Healthcare Edition, which identifies Black-friendly and Black-owned healthcare providers worldwide. A Black survival guide highlighting places across the globe for Black people, the Global Green Book, available on Amazon and iloveblackpeople.com. Special thanks to Banneker Communities.